Good morning and welcome to Great Trees Zen Women's Temple. This morning, Paige Gilchrist will be gracing us with her yoga and her gentleness and voice. But first, we'd like to have the opening sutra by the Reverend Genjo.
An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and to remember and accept and vow it's the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
And now a brief statement about dana. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity, or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana is to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Paige, where would you like your dana sent to?
Great to Great Tree.
Okay, then you can go to greattreetemple.org and follow the donate path. And now an introduction to our speaker, or our doer, or a longtime practitioner of Zen meditation and yoga. Paige is now gracing the Asheville yoga scene with her dynamic teaching style. Her gentle flow classes have a way of meeting you where you are. She creates an environment that fosters deep awareness, and when you feel comfortable challenging yourself at your own pace and level. Paige completed her foundational yoga teaching training and earned advanced certification in therapeutic yoga with a wonderful collective of teachers led by Stephanie Keach at Asheville Yoga Center. She has been a longtime student of Reverend Teijo Munnich at Great Tree Temple and also currently studies the full spectrum of Hindu Dharma with Kaya Mindlin. Welcome, Paige.
Thank you, Lorna. That always feels like such a extravagant introduction for these humble little offerings, but thank you very much. It's so nice to be here, nice to be with everyone. Let me see if I can do a little bit of a sound check here. Hold on. So we can have a little atmosphere. All right, so there is some music playing. Can anybody hear the music? Little bit, it's like it's really faint. All right, so I'll turn it up. I like it to be just in the background, but not so much in the background that it's irritating because you can't really tell what's happening. How about there? Seem okay? Okay, great. Thank you so much for those thumbs up. And it's so nice to see good friends, old friends, new names here. By the way, congratulations, Trey. It's so nice to be here with you in this context. Chloe, it's great to see your name here. David, I know that we've practiced together a little bit before. Chris, I think that we have as well, maybe through this context. Kellyanne, I'm not sure that we know each other, but I'm glad you're here. So, right, and also the idea of speaker and lecture, that's really not going to happen. I'll just talk with you a little bit and then we will get embodied, move our bodies. And it's now been several years that Teijo has graciously invited me to be a part of this. And we've really organized these times, these embodied practices around kind of the quarters of the seasons so that we can do something that's really integral to the yoga tradition and I know a part of Buddhism as well, which is to use kind of what's happening in our natural world to remind us that we're a part of that and that we're not just these separate entities kind of floating around in our heads, but we're embodied beings who attune to the light, the temperature, the changes in the plants and the animals. And so here we are, right on the edge of the winter solstice, which, it has kind of, as opposed to the out and up energy, maybe of springtime and summer, really has or offers us an invitation to move down and in, to simplify, to become maybe a little bit more essential, has some qualities of quietude, even hibernation. So I thought maybe before we actually begin to move, we would do just a little bit of tuning into that. And then I'll introduce to you an optional breathing practice to consider. Before we do any of that, it's nice to have some things to support yourselves. So, your meditation cushion, your zafu could be one thing. If you've got some blankets or towels or anything like that around, maybe other pillows, other cushions. I know some of you prefer to sit in a chair as we practice, which is perfectly fine. There may be people practicing later with a recording who'd prefer to do that. I'll offer some options for being in a chair. If you are in a chair, it's nice to have maybe a surface nearby that you could lean into a little bit or use as some support if that's available. So if you want to gather anything, take some time to get some things to support yourself, do that. And then I'd like to invite you, and you might soften your gaze or close your eyes to do this. I'd like to invite you to maybe just see if you can call up for yourself something about this winter time season, this period that we're entering of really deep winter. Maybe something about that you really appreciate. Maybe even that you could say you find beautiful or nourishing. Could be the way the trees become bare, many of them, and more of their essential selves. Could be the way we tend to use this time to bring light and warmth inside and what that invites. Maybe the way the air gets more still sometimes and that crisp dryness allows us to hear the birds differently. Something that you appreciate, maybe even find beautiful about this deep winter time. Give yourself a moment or two to let that arise. And once something has come for you, if it has, and if it hasn't, no worries, you can just let it be. Once something perhaps has bubbled up for you, see if you can maybe distill that into a word or a phrase. It could be quietude or simplicity or something all your own, just something about whatever arose for you. If you could distill it to a word or a phrase, maybe let that winnowing happen. And then if you like, that word or that phrase, if one has emerged for you, might just become kind of a guiding quality as we move and breathe together. You might let it bubble up now and then. You might let it inform how you move, how you support yourself, how you breathe. And I'll continue to invite you to do that. And then to start, I'll introduce a breathing practice that may be familiar to many of you. It's a very common practice that we use in the yoga tradition, a breathing practice that allows us to gently hug the muscles of the throat a little bit as we breathe in and out through the nose. So the breath becomes a little more internal has a little bit of resonance, little vibration, maybe even a little very soft internal sound. And a great way to touch into this breathing practice, which, if you know about the yoga tradition, we often call ujjayi breathing, is to imagine that you're going to fog a mirror. You could even use your hand, imagine that it's a little hand mirror if you like, or you could just imagine a mirror in front of you. And you can, nice and easy, inhale just in a way that's natural. And then when you feel ready to exhale, exhale through your mouth as if you're trying to fog that imaginary mirror. Just a ah. And then breathe in through your nose. You could close your lips when you do that. And then as if you're going to fog that imaginary mirror. Maybe try that just another couple of times. You're breathing in through your nose. And as if you're going to fog an imaginary mirror, exhale. You can release that little imaginary mirror if you're using it. And maybe you tuned into that gentle hugging of some internal throat muscles. It's not a clenching, not a gripping, just that little hugging. We're going to continue to do that now for a few rounds, but we'll do it with closed lips. And we'll see if we can do that both on the exhale, that fogging action, and also on the inhale. So the breath hugs against the back of the throat also as you inhale. So you can close your lips, exhale naturally, inhale through your nose. And as you're ready to exhale with your lips closed, that fogging action, just a gentle hugging of your throat. And as you inhale, do that same action in your throat in the reverse as you inhale. So you might find as you continue this, if it feels okay to continue, that the breath has some sensation as it moves in and out, that it maybe even has almost a whispering, sometimes it's called an oceanic sort of sound, like a wave moving. That's just internal and subtle. And then for just a few more rounds, if it feels okay to stick with this, see if you can continue all of that and gently dive into that exhaling half of your breath a little more fully. So the exhale might slowly lengthen out. You might even pause at the very bottom. Inhale, still hug against the back of your throat, and you just kind of dive into the length and the slowing down of your exhales, just like the season, that slowing down and diving in. And for the last few rounds, see if you might soften your face a little bit if it's concentrating. Even release your shoulders away from your ears. Let it be just a full-bodied, resonant, gently audible breath that allows you to dive into the exhaling half. And we'll from here begin to move a little bit. So you can stick with that breathing if it feels nourishing and supportive. You can just go back to breathing naturally if that feels better. And if you would like, you might come over to your hands and your knees. You could just be on a rug, you could be on a yoga mat, you could put a blanket under your knees if that would feel supportive. If you're in a chair, you could just arrange your feet nice and steady on the ground and let your hands rest on your thighs. We've been sitting for a long while with our hips creased. So once you get to your hands and your knees, it might feel nice at first, those of you on the ground, just to kind of roll your hips around a little bit, especially let that forward roll happen and get a little creasing open in the fronts of your hips. If you're sitting in a chair, you could just let yourself rock a little bit side to side or swirl your spine around in your pelvis, and do that a few times the other way, just kind of opening up, especially the fronts of the hips. We'll do some movement and shape practices this morning that really let us get into the body's big, deep joints, the hips, the low back, the shoulders. And once you feel like you've worked out some initial kinks, you might just come back to a nice steady hands and knees, and we'll move into something that's probably familiar to most of you, a little cat-cow movement. And we can continue with that breath if that helps you really embody this. When you feel ready to inhale, you can drop your spine a little bit, lift your sitting bones, arch through your back. And then as you exhale, just reversing that with a big deep round through your low back and then your middle back and your upper back. And you can, again, of course, be doing this sitting in a chair, just kind of rocking side to side and back and forth. And if you're doing that breathing practice, that just lets you really hug in toward your center. If you're simply breathing naturally, you still might go back to letting those exhales just hug out. You're not forcing them. You're not holding at the bottom. You're just letting that natural pause at the bottom of your exhale, that slow, deep, internal quiet, be a part of this. And if you'd like, you can continue just like we are. If you feel like you'd like to move down into the joints of your feet and your hands a little bit, every time you inhale and arch your spine, you could try tucking your toes, kind of opening up the bottoms of your feet a little bit. And then as you exhale, you can untuck your toes. You can stretch the tops of your feet, and you might exhale back, kind of hinging back toward a child's pose. And then you could rise up onto your fingertips and kind of suction your palms away, get some space in your wrists and your forearms. So as you inhale, it's back to hands and knees, and maybe tucking your toes and opening up the bottoms of your feet. And as you exhale, stretching the tops of your feet, maybe hinging back a little bit and rising up onto your fingertips so your palms move away from the ground. You can breathe into your wrists and your forearms. So maybe just a few more like that if you'd like, letting it become almost a moving meditation, sinking into your breath, letting those exhales gently tug on you, kind of pause in the quiet at the bottom. And perhaps one more time through, if that feels okay to you. Of course, you can move longer if you'd like. You can always get still sooner than I'm suggesting. And then we'll maybe pause back in that child's pose when you feel ready. You could bring your big toes together. You could let your knees get wide. You could stretch your arms long. You can just be resting down toward the ground. If you want a little bit more support, you could pull in a couple of blankets to fold into, or a yoga bolster, or some cushions if that would feel supportive to you. And then just let this become like a full-bodied bow. Grounded, deep, quiet, steady. And maybe whatever that word or phrase was that distilled that quality that this time of year brings to you, you might softly sink into that for a few breaths. Maybe your breath is still gently hugging the back of your throat. Your hips can sink back toward your heels, so there's the potential to maybe spread through your low back. Big deep fold in the hips, nice full stretch being offered to the tops of your feet, your ankles, your shin. And you can stay just as you are. This may feel like the perfect place to support yourself. There's also the possibility for just a few more breaths here to maybe climb your arms and hands up and over to the right. So they could just kind of tiptoe their way up and over to the right. Your left hand could really press its way down as you sink your left hip back. And then that quiet, deep movement of your breath might billow into your left rib cage, your deep left low waist, low back. That soft little internal mantra of your breath, and maybe that word or phrase filling this movement and this shape. And once you feel like your body's been able to absorb that version of this pose as much as it would like to, you can climb your way back through center and up and over to the left if you'd like to. You can climb your arms up and over. That right hand might really ground. Your right hip could draw its way back so that breath and the resonance of that phrase of this whole quieting time of year can fill up right side body, right low waist, hip, low back. Maybe another breath or so there. And when you feel ready, no rush, your own pace, you can climb your way back through center as you're ready. And it might feel nice after that long stretch of time kind of folded in to climb your way back up. And if you're kind of down on the ground, you can come all the way down to your belly. And we'll move into a shape called Sphinx pose, where you just settle your shoulders under your ears. And again, if you're in a chair, you could have your hands on your legs, or you could rest your arms and hands on a surface in front of you. So your forearms are just kind of gently parallel. Your palms can be nice and spread on the earth. You could stretch your tail back to your feet, and then just kind of gently hug your heart forward. So you get a little bit of spread and opening across your chest. It might feel as if your shoulder blades themselves are slipping down right behind your heart, right behind your lungs. There's a little bit of intentional compression of the low back here. That's nice and nourishing for those big, deep vertebrae there. But if it feels too pinchy or too much, you can come up a little bit, or you could gently hug your belly button toward your spine to give yourself a little more support there. And then it might feel interesting here to let your chin bow right down toward your chest and simply roll one ear over toward its shoulder. You might tip your chin up to the sky. You could even rock your jaw a little bit. Let your chin dip all the way back down, other ear toward its shoulder if you like, just kind of exploring the sides of the neck, the throat. Chin back to your chest when you're ready. You could let the back of the neck traction through a full breath here. And then float your face back up. You might, for a moment, just bow all the way down. You could make a little pillow out of your hands or your forearms. Rest your forehead, like the front of your brain on your hands. Feel your whole belly take one of those breaths deep into the earth, and then ride it back down through your exhale. And then if you'd like, it might feel nice to bend your knees and let your low legs sway a little bit side to side. Let that simply smooth and release into your low back. Again, body just breathing against the earth. And then when your legs are ready to be still, you can let them drop back down. Nice and easy at your own pace, press your way back up. And we'll come into a little variation of a pose that's sometimes called melting heart pose. It seems a little bit like a child's pose, but the difference is we'll keep the hips over the knees if that feels okay. Again, you could be in a chair and you could simply walk your hands forward to a surface. If you're on the ground, you've got your hips over your knees, walking your hands forward. And then from here, let's get into our shoulders a little bit more, upper back, the place where we tend to carry a lot of the weight of the world. You can take your right arm and just slip it under your left arm. So it's kind of nestling in between your chest and your chin. You could either keep your shoulders square, or this could become a little bit of a twist where you kind of let your right shoulder dip down and kind of wrap around your spine. Get the option of completely tailoring this shape to where you are right now, what your body needs, how your breath is moving, and maybe even how that quality you tapped into is inviting you to be. Maybe it was more simple or more still or something all your own. Let it kind of fill the shape and ride your breath. And maybe fill everything with one more breath here. And then when you feel ready, you can just nice and slow, nice and easy, begin to unwrap from that. You might stretch that right arm all the way up to the sky for a moment. You might even swirl through that wrist. You could swirl it around the other way. And then before we do that on the other side, maybe just as a little break, you could come up to standing on your knees. Just come all the way up to standing on your knees if that feels okay. Again, cushion under your knees if you'd like. And once you get there, it could feel nice to scoop your shoulders forward and way up to your ears. You could do that on a big, almost exaggerated inhale. And then maybe an open-mouthed sigh as you slowly roll your shoulders around and back and down. Try that twice more if you'd like. Inhale, scoop your shoulders up. You might even sip in a little bit more breath. So then in an open-mouthed sigh, once again, you can dive all the way down into that exhaling half of your breath. One more at your own pace. Inhaling when you're ready, a little squeeze, any surface tension right there. And then a big open mouthed sigh all the way back, around and down. Pause and absorb all of that for a breath. And then when you feel ready, you can bring yourself back to your hands and your knees. We'll come into that little melting heart shape first, and then turn it into some version either of a fold or a twist so your hips are above your knees, bowing down and in. And then when you feel ready, your left arm can thread underneath your right arm. You can either keep your shoulders square, or you could twist a little bit and bring that shoulder all the way down. Arrange your body. It knows. It'll feel its way into this, into something that feels like it can allow you to release some of what you've been carrying, maybe for the whole year, in your upper back and your shoulders. Back into those slow, deep breaths. Maybe back into It's resonating with that word or phrase or quality that emerged for you. And another breath or so here if you'd like. And then take your time at your own pace. You can peel up out of that. That left arm might stretch its way up to the sky, whole left chest, front shoulder might spread open. You could swirl through the wrist, the joints of the fingers, tendons of the forearm. And then bring all of that back down as you're ready. Come back generally to your hands and your knees, and we'll move into a little bit of a moving lunge and then get a little more deeply into the hips and the thighs. So you may decide you want a cushion or a bolster, your zafu, or if you have yoga blocks can help. All of that can just bring the floor a little bit closer to you if you'd like a little bit more space so that it becomes possible to maybe step your right foot forward. So your right foot can come forward into a lunge, and that support can be right inside the foot. If you're in a chair, you could just turn sideways, kind of bend your right knee and scoot the left knee back a little bit. And then those of you on the ground, we could even walk that right foot off to the right a little bit. It could turn itself out so it's kind of wide here. And then you can just see how it feels to you to move back and forth. You could inhale forward a little bit and exhale, move your hips up and back. You might straighten that leg some amount. You might even peel the toes back a little bit so you get back into the bottom of the foot, the tendons of the ankle, the calf, back and forth a little bit. If it's more comfortable to you to come on down to your forearms, you could do that. Let yourself pulse through that lunging shape a little bit, forward and back a few more times. I'll just show a variation here in a chair for those of you who are choosing to move that way. You could just stretch that leg out and maybe hinge forward and back a little bit. Then once you feel like that movement would like to simply deepen and get a little bit more quiet, you can pause in that lunge shape in any variation. Maybe we'd be going for, say, a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest amount of sensation. So we're not chasing after anything big and deep here. We're letting ourselves quietly settle in. You could come down onto your elbows. You could even rock to the outside edge of that front right foot and let the knee butterfly open a little bit. Or let your head go. And let the back of your neck release. And again, you might reconnect with that breathing practice we started with if that slipped away. You could simply breathe naturally, but let yourself softly rest into the exhaling half of your breath all the way to the bottom. Almost as if you're wrapping your breath and embodying that phrase, that word, that quality deep now in the roots of your body, your hips, your legs, your feet. It's a season of rooting, of sleeping seeds, everything moving down toward gravity. Let yourself be one of those beings settling into gravity here. Maybe another breath or so. You never have to stay anywhere longer than feels okay. When you intuit that your body might like to begin to Kind of slowly, incrementally ease out of this. If you rock to the outside edge of the foot, you can put the foot back down. You can begin to climb your way back up and eventually step that front right knee back to meet your back knee. You can get both of your hands on the ground a minute. You could bring your knees and your thighs together even and just kind of swing your hips way over to one side like they're going to dip all the way down. And you could draw them back up through center and let them dip over the other way, spreading breath and release into your outer hips, outer thighs, low back. Maybe just let that heavy, full-bodied side-to-side rock happen once more, each side, if you'd like. And then you could bring everything back through center as you're ready. You can let your knees get about as wide as your hips again. You can climb back up onto some support, a cushion, some yoga blocks, a stack of blankets, whatever it takes to get that left foot forward. So you're going to move that left foot up toward the front of your mat. It might move wide a little bit. Again, if you're in a chair, you might just turn to the left and come into a lunge-like shape with the back leg moving back a little bit. You can cushion up, pad up here. You can bring that left foot out to the left a little bit more. Maybe it's even angled leftward, and then start that little kind of runner's lunge type flow back and forth, inhaling maybe into the lunge. And exhale, kind of like a slow, again, deep dive down and in, straightening the leg, peeling the foot back a tiny amount. Like you're nourishing and deepening into your own root system here, our feet, our ankles, the bones and muscles of our legs, the rotational socket of the hips. And you're welcome to continue to move as much as you'd like. And at some point, it might feel nice just to get still and deepen in. You can plant that foot, or you could rock to the outside edge of it. The knee could spill out a little bit. You could lower down onto forearms, elbows. You could drop your head. Again, the objective isn't to chase after some big, deep sensation at this time of year or in this shape, but really just maybe finding a 2 or a 3 on a scale of 10 as a place for gravity, the deepening energy of the ground to hold your body. For your breath to settle back into that maybe hushing, whispering, sensory tone that really does almost nurture the central nervous system. It's hugging right against some of the biggest central nerves of the body. And then maybe that word, that phrase, that quality, inviting yourself to embody it here in whatever way feels easy. Maybe you let yourself sink into another breath or so. And then again, it's really slow and gradual. You can begin to peel up if you rock to the outside edge of the foot, you could bring the foot back down. You can begin to peel your hands and arms up and step that front knee back to meet your back knee, and let yourself either be still here or move a little bit in a way that feels like it lets you integrate and absorb everything you've offered so far. You could roll through the barrel of your torso. You could hinge forward and back. You could So if you're craving a downward facing dog, you could do that. Something that lets you kind of breathe and absorb. And there's no rush. I'll just let you know where we're going. We're going to eventually, those of you on the ground, make our way onto our backs. So you can kind of arrange yourself there. It might be nice to have a cushion like your zafu or a bolster or some blankets or something kind of over to the right. It could just be there on standby. Also, if on your back it feels nice to you to have a little cushion under your head or your neck, you could just put a folded blanket up there. Or if you happen to have a blanket or a towel, a nice little thing you can do is put just this little mini roll in your blanket. And then as it rests down there, that's going to fill in the natural curve right behind your neck so that the muscles of your neck aren't going to have to work to hold your head in place. If that feels too fussy, just don't worry about it. You can just come back and rest your head however it's comfortable. And make your way onto your back. And maybe let's start by bending our knees with our feet on the ground. And then from there, with your knees bent, your feet on the ground, nice cushiony support underneath you as much as you'd like. See about crossing your right leg over your left leg, like you're sitting in a chair with your legs crossed. So not a pigeon pose, which we sometimes do, but just that cross of your leg. And then you can let that whole unit of your legs drop in toward your body. And some of you may even decide to take that top right leg and kind of wrap it like the foot behind the shin of your left leg. So we're coming into what's sometimes called eagle pose or a twisted root kind of shape. So deep into the legs and the hips. You can just cross the leg. You can wrap under. You might hold that whole unit of your legs in and you might give it a little rock side to side, just massaging the rim of your pelvis, and the space of your low back. Maybe your head rocks a little bit too as you let your legs nice and heavy and wrapped around each other rock. Feel the whole trunk of your spine resting down into the earth. And then when your body feels ready to get still again, you can take this whole unit of your legs. They can stay wrapped, or you could just have that top right leg crossed over. Let this whole unit of your legs drip over to the right. You can find that little support system we set up there, your cushion, some blankets, a bolster, so that top right leg is encouraging a little bit of stretch maybe along the top of your left hip, your left thigh. If that's more than you'd like, you just unwrap your legs, perfectly fine. And then your left arm might open out, almost like a wing. It can just rest against the earth or on a blanket. Your gaze might even drift off to the left. So you're essentially in a reclining twist, setting this up in a way that really nurtures your system, physicality of your body, the kind of energy you're inviting in right now. With that word or phrase or quality, just with that cadence of your breath, slowly lingering, exhaling half. And as you perhaps dive into that exhaling half of your breath for another few cycles here, you might even take in how the breath almost hugs in toward the center of the body every time you exhale, like a little squeeze along the conduit of your spine. full system release into the quiet grounding of the earth of the whole season. And it could be that the next time your body is ready to exhale here, you let it release again like a sigh. Anything that wants to simply move on out, be carried out on that sigh. But slowly take your time, no rush, and bringing all of that back through center in whatever way feels supportive to you. You can unwrap your legs. It might feel nice to hug both knees, and maybe the knees and the thighs kind of drip wide. You could cradle your knees and your elbows. You could let this shape rock side to side. Some of you may even feel like you want to hold on to the backs of your thighs and stretch one leg out and kind of swirl through that ankle and spread your toes. You could do that on the other side if that's feeling nice. There may be something else entirely here that you, by this point, are just intuiting that your body needs, that your system needs. Another couple of breaths, just right here in center, recalibrating, resettling. And then if you've got a cushion, a stack of blankets, a zafu, you can take it, move it over to the left so it's just over there waiting for you. And cross your left knee, left thigh over your right. So again, it's almost like you're sitting in a chair with your legs crossed. There's option to stay just like that. You could maybe play around with wrapping the legs so it's a little bit more of a twisted root-like shape. Your arms or hands can provide a little weight, and then this whole shape can sway or rock or stir around. And just letting your awareness, your whole consciousness right now dive deep into the body, the low back, the belly, the hips, the legs, the feet. And you're welcome to move and absorb and breathe here as much as you'd like. And then at some point, you might decide to let this whole kind of twisted up root system of your body drip over to the left. So however that happens, you can rearrange in any way to make it feel real supportive and nurturing. You can find that support system over there. If you've got the left leg still crossed over, it can offer just a little bit of a gentle tug on that outer right hip, right thigh, maybe into your right low back. But again, nothing intense, nothing dramatic. Your right arm could open like a wing. You can take your gaze, even let it drift rightward. So just as your legs are wrapped, now your spinal column is twisting around itself. All of this twisting action, a physical incantation to kind of drop in, drop down. Follow that slow going descent of your exhales. To abide in that word or phrase or quality if one emerged for you of this season, and what it offers to you in its simplicity and its quiet, its slanting, deepening light. again, for the last few breaths here, you might consciously acknowledge how the exhales almost hug in toward you, toward that internal center, toward the physicality of the column of your spine. If you would like here, you might consciously sip in one more inhale. It spreads into all the little twisted, wrapped up nooks and crannies of this shape. And then maybe open your mouth, offer your exhale like a sigh, let your whole body release. And then slowly, your own pace and your own way, bring all of that back through center and unwrap everything that's been bound up. And it could feel really perfect here. You can give it a try to put both of your feet back on the ground, maybe even widening them so they're even a little wider than your hips. If you're on a yoga mat, they might even be wider than your mat. You could let your arms just drape open and let your knees windshield wiper side to side now so they can drift one direction. Your gaze can float opposite, and then maybe it's your inhaling breath that brings them back through center. And as you exhale, knees can float the other way. Your gaze can kind of drift off to the side, maybe side to side like that. Now, after having kind of purposely compressed in the inner hips, now we invite the belly, the hips, the front of the pelvis to absorb breath and opening for the low back to be nourished in this little side to side sway. Maybe another time or so. There's no rush about any of this. Just as you then feel ready once more to be completely settled and absorb, we'll come into a shape called Shavasana, how we finish any yoga practice. And it really means just any neutral, supportive shape that lets you absorb and integrate. So a lot of us like to do that on our backs. You could drape your legs over something if you've got a yoga bolster or a few blankets. Sometimes that feels really nice for the low back to drape the legs over something. They could also be resting on the edge of a chair or a couch or a bed if that's nearby. That can be really nourishing. You could also stretch your legs out or just bend your knees and let them drop toward one another. You might rest your hands somewhere on your body, maybe even on your belly, or a hand on your belly and a hand on your heart, that grounding, gently nurturing weight of your own body resting on itself. And feel the whole wide spread of the quiet, deepening earth right now. Hold your body. And let the earthiest part of you, of your bones, your skeleton, really settle into and rest toward the earth. And as that happens, you can let your muscles drape like a blanket right over the bones. You sink and settle a little more fully into the quiet, into the low light, into the still presence of this time. Maybe on your next exhale, you ride it all the way to the bottom, still and quiet. And then let even your awareness on your breath dissolve. Just let your whole being be still and held for just another quiet minute or so. You're welcome to be held and quiet here as long as you'd like. If you'd like to gently move toward a seat to finish together, that's an option too. You could feel your breath coming back into your body a little more consciously. And eventually, then you might hug your knees in toward your chest if you're on your back. You could rock or sway a little bit. Take your time if you'd like from here to roll over to one side, like a little side lying child's pose. You might just curl in there for a breath. Go back to that word or phrase or quality and tuck it in. And then if you would like, just nice and easy, taking all the time in the world, you can press your way up. Find a seat that feels nurturing, supportive if you'd like. Once you're there, it could feel really nice just to cup your hands together, like you're tucking in anything you've touched that feels like it might support you and or others. Breathe around it for one more breath. And if you'd like, you can bow your brain down to your heart. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Paige. It's super nourishing. Thank you for that offering. We'll give back the merit now. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being a part of it. Thanks for inviting me in.
Namaste.
Beautiful solstice time. Namaste.